So we're anticipating what we're gonna read, and I kind of want you to have an idea before we start reading about what the subject is. So you're gonna write 4 describing words, 4 adjectives. Do you have bell work? I may have missed you. 4 describing words about how a kidnapper would act. How does a kidnapper act? 4 describing words about the child he kidnaps. How does he act? And then 4 describing words about that child's parents. How do they act?
Why CNAS? What attracted you to
My initial answer is because kids do the bare minimum to show that they've read what you give them. And it has more like, I'm going to call them checkpoints, to make sure they're doing small tasks. They keep doing small tasks, and you can verify that they're doing these small tasks, and you know that they have some meaning from the message.
Okay, so the small tasks ensure that they end up comprehending.
Yes, I feel like you can't talk about pieces of, let's say the codes that they're highlighting. They can't highlight certain codes without understanding something. So they've gotten some meaning from the passage. They can't do just that first read, pulling small words or phrases from the text without getting some meaning. And by making that first sentence the prediction of what they're going to read, they have to make some meaning out of it. It's even accidental.
So what I'm hearing is it's all about making meaning.
Yes.
And so let's start at the top. What is step 1? I call it the preview.
We do too.
Okay. So in the preview, they look at the title, and they look at the first sentence, middle sentence, last sentence, and pull out a word, a phrase, some little chunk. I often refer to that as like you're taste testing the text to kind of get the gist of what it's all about.
We've done this preview before. You're picking words out of the text before we actually read it. We call it a first read because you are getting meaning from the text, but you're not really reading yet. You're picking out meaning. So you're going to get 1 word, maybe 2 from the title. 1 word, maybe 2 from the first paragraph. 1 word, maybe 2 from the middle sentence. And then a last sentence. The last sentence in the text is actually the last paragraph. The last paragraph is 1 sentence long. You can do that if you're a published writer. You guys can't do that. You're not published yet. But the last sentence on page 11 is the last paragraph of the text. So I want you to pick 1 word, maybe 2, out of all those places in the text. Start with the title that's in that black bar, the white text at the top of your page 7. All right. James Group, what do you have for the first word for your title?
Ransom.
Ransom. Jack, what about your group?
Ransom.
Ransom. Anybody else have ransom? Yeah. Okay, what does the word ransom mean? Yeah.
When you have like someone captive and then it's like pay money or else we'll kill them or something.
Okay, so what's the ransom in that scenario?
Like the money.
The money. The thing you're asking for is the ransom, okay? So we have a kidnapping scenario. We already know that because of our bell work, but if we didn't, that might tell us. Paragraph 1. Devon, what do you have for paragraph 1? Wait till. I like that. Rebecca, what do you have for paragraph 1?
I had kidnapping and apparition.
Kidnapping and apparition. What about this group?
I had kidnapping.
Kidnapping. Paragraph 2, Jack.
We got.
Not paragraph 2. Middle paragraph.
Oh, we got Black Scout.
Black Scout, okay. Cameron?
Drag.
Dragged. What do you have for the last paragraph?
Oh, last.
Yes.
Ketchup.
Ketchup?
No.
Not ketchup. Not ketchup. Yeah. Ketchup is my fry. Okay. Hagen. Last paragraph.
I put runner.
Runner. Okay. So now I want everybody, now that you've heard everybody else's preview and you have your own, write or finish your prediction statement. This text is about. Remember, you are free to be wrong here. You're just trying your best.
What do you think it said?
Yeah.
How's that work in your class so far?
I've never called it a taste test. I also have changed it from not just the first sentence, well, scratch that. When we do like poetry, it's first line, middle line, last line.
Okay.
When we do very short texts, paragraph long texts, it's first line, middle line, last line. But I've changed it like when we did Telltale Heart, when we did Just Now Ransom a Red Chief, they're longer texts, so I've changed it to first paragraph, middle paragraph, last paragraph. Because it gives the kids, in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree with this, it gives the kids more choice, and I feel like if they have choice, they're finding their right words.
It's a bigger chunk.
It doesn't matter. Like it just,
Proportionally.
yes. And I tell them, sometimes I even make it like, it'll say first sentence, middle sentence, last sentence, and I tell them like it's a gift I'm giving them. Like, oh, why don't you look in the whole first paragraph?
Nice.
Yeah, so that's how it works. And then the prediction sentence I've told them can be anything. It's a prediction that like you use all these words to come up with an idea, one word, one anything, or you try to be like fancy with it and try to fit all of your preview words and phrases into one sentence, which they think is kind of fun.
But they don't have to. But
They
if
don't
they
have
want
to.
to work
No,
on
no.
that puzzle,
Absolutely,
they can.
yes.
And the whole purpose of this is that they're setting expectation for what they're reading. Because often struggling readers, they just read blind.
Correct,
And the words that they read go in and out because they didn't know what to expect.
yes. And this way
Okay.
they can keep changing that expectation. Oh, I didn't realize that when it said this word, it meant this instead of the other meaning.
My favorite thing to say is, guys, you've previewed the text, you wrote your prediction. What happens if your prediction's wrong? And I say, nothing.
Absolutely.
You realize you were wrong, so therefore you're comprehending. And like light bulbs go, oh.
And they
it's
also
okay.
really like it when I tell them that that was a first reading.
Tell me more about that.
So I think we talked about this, that every time they get meaning from the text is a reading.
Okay.
And so they think it's really cool that, we finish a cycle or whatever. And so ask them, how they like the text. Did they like this one better or worse than the last one? Whatever. And I ask them, did you realize that we read it 4 times or we read it 5 times? And they're like shocked that they read. And why did we do that? Well, and they tell me, well, we did different things with it every time, so it didn't feel like we were reading it 5 times. Because if you asked a kid to read something 5 times, they'd throw it back at you. So.
Yeah. So they do the preview, they do the prediction, and then do you start with codes or titles?
Titles.
Okay. So titles is when, as they're this is the first time they're actually reading it?
Yes. Well, no. I do preview, prediction, and then I read a all
Chunk.
or a chunk,
Okay.
depending on how long it is. If it's a 3-stanza poem, I'll read the whole thing to them once.
So you do a read aloud for them?
Yes, because I think it's just important for them to hear part of it and hear meaning from part of it.
He's all right now, says Bill, rolling up his trousers and examining some bruises on his shins. So he got the brick to the face, and then something happened with his shins. We're playing Indian. This is Bill talking. We're making Buffalo Bill's show look like magic lantern views of Palestine in the town hall. I'm old Hank, the trapper, Red Chief's captive, and I'm about to be scalped at daybreak. By Geronimo, that kid can kick hard. Bill was pasting court plaster over the scratches and bruises on his features. There was a fire burning behind the big rock at the entrance of the cave, and the boy was watching a pot of boiling coffee with 2 buzzard tail feathers stuck in his red hair. He points a stick at me when I come up and says, "Ha! Cursed paleface, do you dare to enter the camp of Red Chief, the terror of the plains?" All right, who's Red Chief here? Yeah, Jimmy.
The kid.
The kid, how do you know that?
He has red hair.
He has red hair, okay. Anything else?
He's got the feathers.
He put the feathers in his hair, and now he's
And he's also a terror.
also a terror. We also know that. Okay, so he's the terror of the
He's
plains.
not threatened at all by this. Just got kidnapped, insulting, throwing bricks. Okay.
Okay. He's not, okay. We talked about a couple forms of irony. What do you have to learn?
He's playing the captain.
Who's playing captive?
The guy who kidnapped.
The guy who
The guy who
captured.
kidnapped.
Okay. Okay, so we've already got some like against our expectations, right? So I want you now with your group to write some titles. Remember, we want to do one title per paragraph, but here on the right-hand column, the paragraphs get a little bit short, inky. So put some together. If their main ideas can go together, put some paragraphs together and give them titles. Your titles should be 4 words or less, and they're little tiny main ideas. Act as if that one paragraph is a story all on its own. What would you title that story? If your titles are the same as your neighbors, it just means you're working together, and that's totally fine.
The story for the first one.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
The
good part.
Oh, okay. Well, I only have.
So I read a portion of it to them, and then I tell them to keep reading. And we've either created titles from what I just read, the chunk that I read, or we don't, and I tell them, go back and title that, and while you're reading, create titles for all of the sections. So I really like it when I can read the whole thing to them, the small whole thing, and then tell them, now go back from the beginning, and I'm not going to help you with titles, and you work as a group and come up with titles and argue about them and get them down to 5 words or less.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I switched to saying that as a main idea
was genius.
because they know what a title is.
They do.
If you can capture this paragraph, what would you title it? That's going to be the topic at least, or the main idea.
But again, they don't see it as a huge task because I've told them to choose so few words. It's 1 to 5-ish words.
Yeah.
We're trying to think, what couple words would I describe this paragraph as? Failure is, I'm going to reread it for us. Failure is supposed to be a great teacher. But if that's, so this is about failure, being a teacher, okay. But if that's true, why are so many of us unable to acquire the knowledge that this great teacher has to impart? Why do we keep failing? I like that it has questions, and it's asking questions about failure and learning. So I might just write in my margin, and you can copy me. Cues about F and L. What is Q? What does that stand for? Questions, yeah. See, in the margins, you don't have to write complete sentences. You don't have to write complete words. It's like a note for yourself, reminding you what this paragraph's about. So questions about, what's F? Failure, thank you. And what's L? Learning. So questions about failure and learning. This paragraph is all about questions about failure and learning. And so that's what I wrote. That's what I'm going to write right here in the margin, or right over here, either side. Please write that down.
So we've already done titles, so they've made meaning from that,
Okay.
and then they move on and we talk about what imagery is, what is setting imagery, and they look through the text. So they do one code. They'll look for all the setting imagery in the whole, or whatever the first code is, in the whole passage, and then they'll go back and do character motivation.
Let's start with setting imagery. So whatever color highlighter you have in your hand right now, highlight where it says SI setting imagery. And the reason it says SI before setting imagery is, and you won't have a highlighter with you, right? You'll just have a pencil, so you might write SI or whatever other code you come up with, character motivation CM, next to something that you kind of want to pull evidence from the text for. So that's why I said codes. You either are highlighting or you're writing that SI next to important pieces of the text. So we're going to do setting imagery first. And I'd like for you, with your group, to look back at the left-hand column. I'm going to give you about a minute. I don't want you to highlight yet. I just want you to look back at your left-hand column on page 7 and the notes that you wrote on page 7, and just talk about it. Talk about where you might be able to see some setting imagery.
Is that like,
Wait, did you say flannel cake?
that's what it says right there.
Flannel cake?
I have no idea.
Is it just a cake made of flannel material?
Maybe it's like, it looks like flannel. No.
All right, can we share out some examples and see if we found anything good? Maybe you're going to help out some other groups. Somebody who found something. What do you got, Krishna?
There was a town down there as flat as a flannel cake and colors of it.
Okay, we talked about that, right? What else?
I said that one that he just said.
Yes.
I said that for more of character motivation. Because like since it's so small, then
Go on. I just got excited, I'm sorry.
like since the town's so small, then it's easy for them to do. So it's character motivation, right?
They're motivated, like,
Do it.
to
It's easy.
go to that part of town. I like that better. Is that okay? Does that make sense? So the perpetrators, the villains, what are we calling them?
I'd
The
say they should be
The kidnappers.
bad guys, the protagonists, maybe.
Stupid ones.
Yeah,
because they're the main.
and then the kid becomes the antagonist. That's fantastic. They are motivated to be in that town because of how the people there act. I love it. All right, so with your color, whatever you highlighted setting imagery with at the top of your page, let's highlight some examples there. How many minutes do you guys think you need to do column 2 with your group?
What examples are we highlighting?
The examples that you found.
I don't know if I was supposed to, but
How many?
I want some foreshadow.
5 minutes?
So highlight
And you
that.
guys can work on the second column for setting imagery?
So it seems to me that the first draft read where they're doing the preview and the prediction, and then you do a read aloud, it's very, get the gist, but you don't really know exactly what you've read, just got kind of the major players. Titling, you're getting basic comprehension. When you move into coding, then you're analyzing patterns, motifs that are forming,
And author's choice.
and author's choice.
Yes.
Yeah, why they did it that way. And the beauty about CIS is with your codes, you can point their direction to any standard. You can point it to compare and contrast or cause and effect, character development, in a nonfiction piece, rhetoric and structure and all those kind of things. So it's kind of built in. You're teaching them to read with certain lenses. That's why I kind of like it. So they've done the preview, the prediction. They've heard a read aloud from you, a part of it. They've done titles and codes, and then they summarize. And
I
talk to me
switched that
about
around too.
Okay, talk to me about
So in the resources that you gave us, you have the summary next,
Mhm.
and then the questions after that. And I feel like the
Tell me about
questions,
the questions first.
the questions are super basic comprehension. Where
Okay.
the titles we decided were basic comprehension questions, but I feel like or comprehension ideas. If you can answer the 6, that's what we've decided on lately, is 6 comprehension questions, then it helps them answer the summary, which at this point we still have very structured. Who's the protagonist? What does he want? What gets in his way?
Mhm.
How does he change at the end?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
The title and the author.
Yeah.
Yes. So I feel like after they answer those 6 questions, they're better equipped to add some extra into their summary, not just those 4 sentences.
That makes sense. So after they do the preview, the prediction, they read aloud, they title, they code, they answer basic questions,
Write a summary.
they write a summary, then there's some kind of analysis, graphic organizer that helps them bring all this information to make meaning for something particular. It's usually theme.
Lately it's been theme.
But for nonfiction could be the major argument, or my personal favorite is if you're reading a series of texts in the set, after they go through all the steps, then there's a graphic organizer that has you connect all the texts together.
But all of those different ways you can go with it make it work for any text you have, any curriculum you have, any year level of teacher.
Any discipline.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I just came from band. We were working on converting
Yes.
this to how they read a piece of music. They look at the title, they do all these things. The parts we haven't gotten to with you yet is student-generated questions,
Yes.
which is scary for
Absolutely.
me, because it's hard to make them
Yes.
make questions like we would make questions.
Because it takes us a long time. So
Yeah.
how are we going to teach them to
So
do
what
this?
structures do we give them? And we can give them sentence starters, there's graphic organizers
Absolutely.
we can use as well. But I think that's a goal. By the end of the year, we do that at least once. I got this from Just Read Florida, from my reading coach, and then had to fiddle with it to meet my students' needs and streamlined it and make it my own. You've done the same exact thing. I made a template hopefully use it and change it
Mhm.
and make it the Dowd version.
Yes,
And then whoever uses it takes the principles
yes.
and then makes it work for their text and their students.
Right, and that's why every time I've shared it with somebody, I've given them the original. Because I feel like if you give somebody, we talked about this, a copy of a copy of a copy, then it starts to look like
Yeah.
some weird animal, so,
Uh-huh.
but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you
working,
get away from the essential principles.
Yes.
probably.
but it's working, so.
Cool.